Hey guys, this is your video DIY for 7.11c. This is your first video. We're going to have a couple of more. So please make sure you have your note sheet in front of you so you can take notes and hopefully learn something. We are going to first look at angle relationships. And the first vocabulary word that you need to write the definition of is vertex. So what the vertex is the point where two rays meet. So point where two rays meet. And that would be this point right here. We're looking at a clock. That is my vertex. Rays, this word, rays, that would be the lines here. Those are your rays. Alright, so we have types of angles that we're going to look at, and you may recall some of these, and so maybe just a review. We have right angles. That's usually indicated with this little right angle mark. We have acute angles, and those are always less than 90 degrees. We have obtuse angles, and those are greater than 90 degrees. And then we have straight angles, which is just a straight line. And if you were to be asked the measure of that, you would say 180 degrees. So now let's look at name and identifying angles. So we're going to name and identify. So I have a model. And if we have an intersection like this, we can look at the angles and see that two angles are vertical if they are opposite angles formed by the intersection of two lines. So I have two lines intersecting each other. It kind of looks like a road. A lot of questions will have roads, and you have to find the angle measures. But anytime that they are opposite from each other, they are congruent to each other. And congruent means that they have the same measure. So we're going to look at some examples for like this one. If this is 80, this is 80. If this is 30, this is 30. So this little symbol down here indicates angle. So that means angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical and the same measure. Angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles, and they are the same measure. So it kind of looks like a less than sign, but not really. So this is angle 1. It looks like that. Sometimes they'll put a little fancy M in front of it to show the measure of angle 1. So let's take a look at a little bit more. Two angles are adjacent to each other if they share a common vertex and a common side, but do not overlap. So, for example, angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent to each other, but they do not have the same measure, because if you look closely at these, they form a straight line, and a straight line measures, the measure of a straight line is 180 degrees. So if we know that this angle, if we know the measure of angle 1, we can find the measure of angle 2, because the two together form a straight line. So this is a pretty difficult example to start you off with, but we're going to look at determining a missing measure given everything that we just learned. So we know that this angle and this angle are congruent to each other, which means that they measure the same thing. So I know that it is 130 degrees, but it's 2 times some number plus 2 equals 130 degrees, so we're trying to find out what that number is. So guess what we're going to set up? I told you equations would never go away. So let's set up an equation to find the missing measure. So I know that 2x plus 2 is going to equal 130 degrees because opposite angles are congruent to each other. Vertical angles are congruent to each other. I look at it as opposite because they're opposite from each other, but you can look at this V to help you remember that they're vertical. So the V helps you remember they're vertical. So now let's solve the equation. I have to subtract 2, left side, right side, subtract 2. I'm left with my 2x, nothing, an equal sign, and 128. So now I know that 2x's equals 128, but I need to know what 1x equals. So I must divide both sides by 2. This leaves me with 1x, and 128 divided by 2 is 64. So I know that the value of x is 64. So now let's look at you trying to find the other two vertical angles in this diagram and give it another shot. So please pause the video and look at the other two vertical angles. And we know that they are congruent to each other. So I guess I'll help you get set up right quick. So if you have to find the vertical angles where the two V's touch each other, you know that they're congruent to each other. So I can set up an equation. 3y minus 10, that's this angle here, is equal to the one opposite, the vertical angle here, 50. So pause the video, come back to me, and we will solve this equation. Alright, so I know you did left side, right side. Plus 10 on this side, plus 10 on this side. I'm left with 3 y's, nothing, an equal sign, and 60. So 3 y's equals 60, but I need to know what 1 y equals, so I must divide. And I get 1 y equals 20. So hopefully this is pretty easy for you. Go try the evidence, and if you get finished with all of it today, you can move on to lesson 2. If you have any questions, ask for a workshop or set up tutoring with me.